So, it's time for another tier list. It's been a while since I made a tier list, so there's been 3 new Pokemon added to the game since I've made one. Obviously, you probably would have seen some in between. As you would know, I make tier lists for newer players for the most part. So, most of what will apply here will rely on Ultra League and below. So, take what I say with a grain of salt if you are better at the game. But most of this does still apply to the higher leagues. You will notice the main thing is that Pokemon like Zoroark, Aegislash, Zarina, Mew are all quite low, which is unusual. But that is mainly because they are hard to play for new players, and so they will struggle with that. But of course, there has been a lot of changes since I've made a tier list, and so a lot of things are going to get moved around. Starting off with Darkrai. Darkrai was the best character in the game as of when I made my last tier list. He has received many a nerf, and so I'm going to drop him down to the A+ tier. You can still get away with Dark Void and Nasty Plot, however now Dark Pulse is more reliable, and so if you're going to play Darkrai, I'd probably stick with that build. Now that Darkrai is no longer the best character in the game, there is not really an incredible force carry Pokemon, and so Comfey is going to drop right down to the A tier, mainly because Comfey is good when something else is good. If there's something that you can leech onto and just keep them alive and just win the game outright, that's when Comfey becomes good, but Comfey is not really in that field right now, and so I can't. There's quite a lot of Pokemon here that I'm going to change around, so if you have any extra opinions on what I could change, do let me know, because some of these are kind of half and half. Speaking of though, let's talk about Psyduck. Ever since I made my last tier list, Psyduck has pretty much taken over the game. Comfey's not really in that field right now, and so I'm going to keep them there in the A tier because, like I said, there's not really a dominant Pokemon in the game. Psyduck is still an incredible supporting Pokemon. Surf is just a great move. You can work it with either Psychic or Disable. Psyduck can help out just so many Pokemon in this game, and it's just such a dominant force. Just honestly, use Psyduck while it is still strong. The next thing I will mention is Miraidon. Miraidon has returned. If you remember from when he first released, Miraidon was absolutely busted. Now he has returned to his spot as the best attacker in the game. You can run either build, Electro Drift, or the Charge Beam build, depending on what you're going up against. And just general output of damage is just kind of insane. If you need an attacker on your team, definitely consider Miraidon. In general, just use this tier list as a guideline. It's not you must use these Pokemon to rank up. That being said, when I last made a tier list, Greedent was god-awful because no one understood? Because no one understood what he did. He's not really a defender, he's more of just get in your face, annoying pest. And he wasn't very good at what he did. However, he got buffed. If I had made this I can't even speak right now. If I had made this tier list probably earlier in the month or late December, I probably would have put Greedent, not gonna lie, in A+. But now he's dropped down again because of subsequent nerfs, and so I'm going to put him in probably the bottom of A. Still, for me, this is just downright astounding. Greedent has been awful for the longest time, and quite frankly, I don't really like him, I'm going to be honest. And so I'm not exactly sad that he's not good, but I'm glad that we are moving towards more Pokemon being readily available for every player, and for everything to be good in some kind of way. I really do prefer games when there are a lot of balance. That being said, as in, like, a lot of different options. You're not confined to just specific things, which relates quite well with the state of the game right now. There's not really anything that's very, very broken, as obviously Darkrai's come out of the meta, so has Psyduck a little bit. And so there's nothing outstanding just completely snowballing games anymore, which is nice. That being said, I am going to move some of these harder characters up, because there are certain hard characters that are now a lot more rewarding to play, including Zarina. And I'm going to put Zarina in the bottom of A. Zarina is very strong right now. If you can learn how to play Zarina, 100% go for it. But it's kind of something you have to dedicate yourself towards. If you want to play Zarina, make sure you know what you're doing, because you will draw your team back if you do not. And so if you want something a lot more safe, I would say go with a Blaziken. But if you're willing to take that risk, then go for it. If this tier list was for Masters and up, this would definitely be in A+. But now Zarina is a lot more rewarding, and so I would encourage new players to experiment a bit more with these harder characters and just see what you like. Just in general, apologies if I sound poor in terms of audio quality. I have a bit of a cold right now, and so I have a bit of a croaky voice, but you'll just have to ignore that. That being said, I have just noticed something very crucial. Tyranitar is no longer any good. Unfortunately, my favourite Pokemon, well, second favourite Pokemon, my favourite's actually Aggron, but my second favourite Pokemon is now crap. Tyranitar is in this weird spot where he's either incredibly good and breaks the game, or just really bad. You have to use him in the central area, you have to be constantly getting XP because he doesn't really get any good until level 9. But when you do get your level 9, you are fine. But by that point, when he's not overpowered, he can't just take over the game when he levels up. Think of it this way, why would you have this big of a grind just to get your Tyranitar when you can just pick, say, Espeon or Meowscarada and have that strength at level 6? It's just not really comparable. Machamp is also just really mid, and that being said, he's not even mid though, because mid would be B, and he's not good enough to be in B. Right, before I move something else around, I'm going to start talking about Tinkaton. Tinkaton only really has one good set, but that one set works very well. And so I'm going to move Tinkaton to right here in A+. I'm trying not to repeat myself, but like I did say, Tinkaton has only one good kit, but that one good kit is good. And so if you're going to run Tinkaton, make sure you're running Gigaton and Thief right now, as that's really the only good option. But when you do, it's quite good. Just spotted Phalanx, which is going to move down to C. Phalanx. Oh, Phalanx. Phalanx is just a generally abandoned Pokemon. It was really good when it first came out. They didn't really do anything as soon as the next Pokemon came out, which I believe was Armarouge. And so as soon as it wasn't in the spotlight, they just kind of ignored it and left it nerfed. And it's just not really done very well after that point. Phalanx is cool. Please buff him. He kind of needs it. What I am going to do is I'm going to move that's not Sylveon. I'm going to move Scizor down to A, and I'm going to move Garchomp. I'm going to keep Garchomp in A. Garchomp was very good for a period of time between my tier lists, and he got nerfed, but he kind of stayed the same in terms of my tier list, because he was still really good for new players, because he's very easy. You can snowball your games nicely with Garchomp. A lot of these all-rounders in this kind of field, I've just noticed Charizard, I'll talk about Charizard in a second. A lot of these all-rounders you can make work quite well. So, Charizard. Charizard had a period where it was pretty good. Now it's not again, as per usual. Charizard's going back down to C. No, let's not do that. We'll put him in B. Charizard is just kind of He just doesn't really do anything that, say, Blaziken can't do, Mimikyu can't do, heck, even Tinkaton can't do now. He's just kind of fallen back into obscurity, and it's kind of sad. But then again, you're still going to see your Charizards and your Greninjas and your Cinderaces and your games, and they're all going to be holding leftovers, and that's a fun time. But just in general, Charizard just doesn't really perform. Another thing I can move around is Blastoise. It's going to come back down to the bottom of A. Blastoise is still kind of good. You can make him work with Rapid Spin, you can make him work... Like, he pretty much does not have a bad kit. The only one that I would say is bad is probably Water Spout and Surf, but no one runs that anyway because you would have to be just really stupid to run that. And he's good at taking space, he's good at the role that he fills. The next one I'm going to mention is Slowbro, who is only really in A+, because he's just sort of fell out of the meta right now. He's still very strong. The Water Gun is very good secure. The Unite move is good for isolating the carry and taking him out. Still a really good defender, but just doesn't really fit into the current meta, if you know what I mean. I'd also like to say I'm going to keep Pikachu here, probably just about in the middle, mainly because just generally Mage Pika is kind of back, I would say. I've been finding a lot of success with Mage Pika. Just being able to stun people and then getting that massive amount of damage from Thunder can really help in a team fight, especially when they're all really clustered up. Sylveon, I'm going to bring down to B. If you saw my guide, it still has a purpose with the whole Hyper Voice and pairing with another special attacker to really work together to take down targets. But once again, it just falls into the category of, like, why would you use Sylveon when you can use Espeon, when it's just better at damage dealing on its own, rather than needing a special attacker. If you want to learn more about all the other Pokemon that I don't mention in these videos, because they just don't really move around that much unless there's a big change, you can watch my other tier lists where I'll go into more detail about them. That being said, I'm going to move Hooper up to A tier. Although it is a harder Pokemon to play, I believe the value, like Zarina, brings too much to the table for bad players to miss out on just because they don't know what they're doing. I'm not saying you're bad for playing Hooper, I'm saying it is a struggle to learn, and so if you are committed to playing Hooper, you need to be committed to playing Hooper. But just generally the value of, especially the Unite move, just being able to bring everyone to the fight. Of course, in solo queue, it's a lot worse because Hyperspace Hole, people don't really use your portal, especially in the lower ranks, of course, when you're climbing initially. But it can be very useful overall, even just for yourself. And you can kind of just be a little gremlin just sitting in the back, just stunning people with your Astonish in the beginning sections of the game, getting secures, and just generally being a good ally to your partner. Mr. Mime, I'm going to bring down to A. He's just kind of fell off out of the meta. He's still got good value in the power swap and the stuns from the Unite move and the secure early game, especially if you want to use the wall build. Obviously, it will take a lot more practice with, like, trapping people in walls and stuns into the wall with your confusion. But again, if you're committed to playing the Mime, go for it. Lapras. Just noticed you because you're right at the bottom. Lapras, I'm going to move back up to the bottom of A tier. Lapras, in general, has gotten a couple of buffs. Lapras has been bad for the longest time, and so I'm very thankful that they buffed this guy. Again, not a traditional defender, but can definitely help your team out if it needs. And so if you like playing Lapras, I'm just going to say it with everyone, go for it. A good thing with Unite at the minute is there's truly no wrong answer. As long as you know the Pokemon you're playing and understand it functionally and mechanically, you should do quite well, even if you are using Tyranitar, which I'm now going to move to the bottom of C tier. Nothing else has truly changed, and so I'm going to finally talk about the main thing that you came here to see, my predictions on where Galarian Rapidash will fall in tier lists. And from first initial thoughts, I'm throwing Rapidash into the top of A tier. The kit seems overall quite well. The ability to just run around all the time, just spinning circles around your opponents. Dazzling Gleam and Smart Strike seems to be the build to go with. Dazzling Gleam agility is also quite good, but I'd say Smart Strike is probably the build to go with. Seems like a very fun, different speedster, which is a good point. It's a speedster, and so I'm going to put it here with the other speedster. That needs to be corrected. Still don't know why you're a supporter and... Clefable's actually a supporter now, not actually a defender. Fun. But yes, I would say if you want to play this new flashy unicorn, definitely, if you have the funds, of course, go for it. It seems very fun. I plan to buy it in the coming days. Last few adjustments I'm going to make, just simply from different meta shifts and what I feel is right to me for the tier list. Zacian is going to come down to A, just below Garchomp. Ho-Oh is going to come up to A, just above Greedent. Dragapult is going to come down to B, and Dark Bear is going to come up to A. All his Pokemon are just general adjustments and different playstyles that we are seeing currently in the game. Zacian got a few nerfs, comes down a little bit. Urshifu Dark just generally seems to function a bit more. Dragapult, I feel, just seems to be worse and worse as time goes on. Dragapult, I feel, is kind of sad. I love Dragapult, but it just doesn't really seem to work like other central Pokemon. And Ho-Oh, especially with a coordinated team, that res is ridiculous. You can stack really well, you've got good secure on Tailwind. The Unite move is honestly crazy when you have a coordinated team. If you have a good Ho-Oh, you'll probably win that game. Honestly, I'm going to put Ho-Oh in front of Trevenant. And that is going to be it for today's tier list. If you'd like to know more about the Pokemon that I've not really mentioned, you can go and see those tier lists that I've made in the past. If you'd like to see guides on Pokemon like Sylveon and Blaziken, I've made guides for them on my channel in the playlist on screen now. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.